them. And you have people also who celebrate the motive that we are not talking about. Like I suggest you say, but forget all these things people are doing. We also don't agree with them. We don't agree with the free mixing, the breathing of musical instruments, and so on and so forth. So, but you can't tell us not to mark that day, a dhikra, in remembrance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, if you've looked at these arguments, how do we take the most correct opinion? There's a phenomenon you have with people when scholars differ, well, just leave them alone. Then you can choose which one you like. It's not like that. You are mandated to choose the most correct. Are we following? You are mandated to choose the most correct, but at times not everybody can choose the most correct. Are we following? And there are aspects of difference of opinion that are accepted in the Sharia. When you choose the most correct, you are supposed to choose the most convincing. If one is a student of knowledge that can look at the evidences marshaled by both sides, it is compulsory on him to look at those evidences, one after the other, and choose the most convincing. If one cannot read the books, one will look at the scholars and choose the one that he knows is most trustworthy. It's like one goes to a doctor, and then you have a lump on your head, and one doctor says you have cancer. And the other doctor says, well, it's just a boil. I mean, you can't say it's just a boil and forget it. Somebody has just said it's what? Cancer. You will now look at how do you want to choose the most correct opinion. Even if it's not cancer, you going ahead with cancer treatment is not easy. Chemotherapy, may Allah not afflict us with cancer. So in this category, you'll be forced to choose the person you trust the most. It's like this also when it comes to issues like this. Allah said, فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ. And when you differ on something, فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. You are supposed to go back to what Allah has said and what the Messenger has said and take the position that is most correct. So let's do it this way. Those who say it is not permissible argue that it's bid'ah. So we may not need to look at the evidences. We need to look at the evidence of those who say that yes, we love the Prophet and we are remembering him. So the first, now to respond to that is to say that, well, yes, loving the Prophet is not just something we say. It must be part and parcel of us. Our iman is not complete until we love Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We love him far more than our family, our father, our children, our property. We love the Prophet far more than those things. And at times people feel like, how do I love the Prophet more than my family? Well, like you do. Your virtue of being Muslim, you do. Imagine you want to pray Zuhr, and your child says, Daddy, if you love your child, you can't pray Zuhr at this time, because I'm going to cry. if you pray Zuhr. I mean, some children will tell you that if you don't do this, I will cry. Or your wife has an issue with you at the time of Dhuhr, and so you cannot pray Dhuhr. You would explode. That is the acid test to show that you actually love the Prophet far more than these individuals. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Some of our parents want us to do the golden jubilee, silver jubilee of the burial of their grandfather or the grandmother, and then we say that no, we can't. Why do we reject? Our parents have so much. They have this very high. We love them so highly that before they say do, we have done it. But when it comes to tradition, they say no, we are not going to do it, Mama. Why? Because we love the Prophet far more than we love them. So you don't need to feel that but you love the Prophet already. Umar ibn Khattab said, Ya Rasulullah, I love you far above every other person except myself. And God said, Umar, you cannot attain Iman until you love me even more than yourself. And Umar said, as you have said it, I love you even more than myself. And they showed it. I gave an example of Umar. Now they said when he don't die. If it was clear to him that this man is dead, they know, die for, die me. So, we love the Prophet. But the Prophet told us, Allah told him to tell us how to show his love. Is it in the hadith? No. It's in the Quran. Qul in kuntum tuhibbun Allah. What did he say? Fattabi'uni. In is a conditional article. In kuntum. وَجَوَابُ الشَّرْطِ فَاتَّبِعُونِ. If you love the Prophet, if you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what you're supposed to do is what? فَاتَّبِعُونِ. Follow me. يُحْبِرُكُمُ اللَّهُ. Then Allah will love you. وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ and will forgive your sins. So, to show the love of the Prophet is to follow him. He used to do 4 rakah before Dhuhr, do the 4 rakah. That is Mawlid. He used to pray 4 rakah for Dhuhr, we pray 4 rakah for Dhuhr. That is Mawlid. He used to, what else? The way he talks, the way he walks. The Prophet is the most studied individual in history, not in human history. So you see scholars debate how many grey hairs did he have before he died. How many grey hairs? How does he used to walk? What was the extent of his beard? What was his complexion? How does he? If the Prophet was going and you called him, he will not turn his head. He will turn totally and face you. All this you have in the books of Hadith, recorded keenly and carefully. They will tell you how soft the hand of the Prophet was. And as man said, his hands were his hands were like velvet. The way he talks, the way he behaves, the way he smiles, and everything about the Prophet has been described. So that is the response, that if you want to show the love of the Prophet, it is by following his sunnah. That is what he taught us to do. So also, scholars who said, so when we say some scholars do it, yes, and this is very important also. We are to follow our scholars. They are like the means to an end. They must not become the end in themselves. We follow them until it is clear to us that they have made a mistake. Because for the scholars, even when they make errors, Allah rewards them. So, but when we definitely follow them, when the error is clear, then it becomes a crime, it becomes a sin. So, yes, scholars do. We have scholars who said the Mawlid is permissible, but on what evidence? Al-bid'atu al-hasana. This is Baytul Qasid. This is where we actually need to discuss on. And I think we've discussed, I once discussed bid'ah here once. I just want to stress a point. What is called sunnah. When we say something is sunnah, we talk about the actions of the Prophet, the statement of the Prophet, and then what he ratified. I want to talk about the sunnah of the Prophet that is based on inactions of the Prophet. I'm not talking about actions now. I'm talking about inactions of the Prophet as an evidence in Islam. And this is very important when we talk about bid'ah. It is called as-sunnatu at-tarkiyyah. Inactions of the Prophet as a valid source of evidence. And then we will get what I'm saying very, very keenly. When we talk about as-sunnatu at-tarkiyyah, as-sunnatu at-tarkiyyah is what I said because I've been using this word far more frequently. The inactions of the Prophet ﷺ. When we say the Prophet ﷺ did not do something, we are talking in terms of this thing being an act of worship, and then there was a reason for the Prophet to do that thing. Wujudul muqtadi. Are we following? The Prophet ought to have done that thing. And there was no restrictions to him doing that thing. Well, I want us to get this very well. Inactions of the Prophet would become an evidence if and when the Prophet did not carry out an action when there was a compelling reason for him to do so, and there was no restriction for him not to do otherwise. Is it clear? Now let's start implementing it, and then you'll see that it's a very clear thing. So that's Janazah, the prayer on the dead or for the dead. Is it Salah? Is it Salah? You're saying no? Yes, it's Salah. We call it what? Salah to Janazah. Is that not the case? Yeah. Do we make adhan and iqamah? Why? Is there any evidence that says do not make adhan or iqamah? There's none. It was because the Prophet did not do it. And there was a compelling reason why. Because adhan is what? Ibadah. Adhan is dhikr. And you have verses of the Quran telling us about the importance of what? Dhikr. You find the Prophet saying that let your tongue always be wet with the remembrance of Allah. But even with these evidences that are general in scope, you find that at the time of Salatul Janazah, the adhan will not be made. Are we following? What is the evidence there? The Prophet didn't do it in actions of the Prophet. Are we following? Now, the verse of the Quran says, إن الصفا والمروة من شعائر الله فمن حج البيت أو اعتمر فلا جناح عليه أن يطوف بهما. Allah says Safa and Marwa, the two hillocks, are part of the sha'air, the symbols of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَمَنْ حَجَّ الْبَيْتِ, whoever does the Hajj, أو اعتمر, or you do the Umrah, you must do the what? The sa'i, the movement between Safa and Marwa. The Arabic word Allah uses what? Yatawwafa bihima. From tawaf. Abi? Yatawwafa. Tawaf. I mean, it seems similar. And we know that after every tawaf, what do? We pray 2 rak'ah. If you do the tawaf of the base of the Kaaba, we do 2 rak'ah at the Maqam Ibrahim. Why is it the case? And you have this general evidence saying that Safa and Marwa is also what? Tawaf. Why don't we do 2 rak'ah nafila after our sa'i? The Prophet didn't do it. Are we following? Now, if you look at the actions of the Prophet, and even now very common, I hope I will not forget this. Salatul Eid. When we pray Salatul Eid, if there adhan or iqamah, why don't we do it? And it's Salatul Jama'ah. Why don't we do adhan or iqamah? Because the Prophet did not do it. Why is it the case that our khutbah is always after the salah? Are we following? Why do we put the khutbah of Jum'ah is before? The khutbah of Salat is what? After. Why? That was how the Prophet used to do the khutbah, and we did not realize that the Prophet ever did otherwise. In fact, the companions argued with that. Abul used to say, and there is no adhan and iqamah when you want to pray Salatul Eid. Now let's tackle some of those issues people brought. The compilation of the Quran, yes, of course. The Prophet did not do it. Why is it the case that this has not become a bid'ah? It's not bid'ah because there was no compelling reason at that time to compile the Quran. Are you following? And there was a restriction. Why was there no compelling reason? Because the Prophet was alive. And then people had the reading, they have records of the Quran. You go to them, you have an issue, you ask the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, what about this verse? And he tells you, okay, this is what verse is all about. What's the meaning of this verse? He tells you this is what the meaning of the verse is all about. There was no reason to have the Quran compiled in book form. There was a restriction. What's that restriction? The restriction is that the Quran was still being revealed to the Prophet. If you have it in book form, where do you want to add the next verse? Are you following? And perhaps it's not the way we have it now. But Allah has made things easy for us. And perhaps by that, the way things are easy, that's why some of us are lax. I used to give an example of, at some of the Prophet, if you wanted to wake up and do your nawafil in the middle of the night, you would have to go out and get water. Or they give the water, they would have prepared water for you in the middle of the night. If you needed to ease yourself, major defecation, there were no toilets in the houses. You go right into the desert, where desert lions may eat you, or animals may harm you. And these people were regular in their observance of the Hajj. The water in the desert will be extremely cold. Now, where is our own toilet? 2-3 steps, you enter the toilet. Because I've been very close to us. If I stand up from my bed, 3-5 steps, I'm in my toilet. I don't need to turn the tap and voila, I have water. And the tahajjud is difficult. So when we ask Allah put us in Firdaus, please let us know that yes, we are only asking Allah based on His grace. We do not deserve it based on actions. So, and when we said, when you ask Allah of Jannah, don't ask Him of a veranda in Jannah. Something, please Allah, no, I'm wicked. Just give me a toilet. He said, وَإِذَا سَأَلْتَ اللَّهَ وَإِذَا سَأَلْتُمُ اللَّهُ الْجَنَّةِ When you ask Allah for Jannah, فَاسْأَلُوهُ فِي الدَّوْسِ الْآن. So ask Allah, that's optimism. However evil you are, don't ask Allah, oh Allah, don't give me toilet. At least I'll get the air. No, he said, ask Allah of the highest of Al-Jannah. Even though as we are asking, we know that, but with His grace, Allah can give it to us. So, if it were in book form, you could take a pen or a biro and then cancel it and then write underneath. It wasn't like that. They were recording on parchment, on leather, on bones, on stones, on things like that. This is how they were recording the Quran. So and then the Quran was, some verses were revealed simultaneously. And whenever it's revealed, brother said, put this one in Baqarah, put this one in Ali Imran, put this one in so. That was how the Quran was. It was difficult for you to compile the Quran in book form while the Prophet was still alive. So that is why the compilation of the Quran cannot be bid'ah. Are we following? That's why I explained the principle earlier, that look, these are what people would say. So also, the statement of Imam al-Khattab that ni'ma bid'ah wa hadhihi, this is a good bid'ah. Yes, when we talk about bid'ah, we talk about bid'ah in two ways. We talk about bid'ah linguistically. Linguistically, there's nothing wrong with bid'ah. In fact, the Prophet may be called a bid'ah. So in the Quran, verse said, مَا كُنْتُ بِدْعَةً مِنَ الرُّسُلِ, I am not an innovation. What he was saying is that what the earlier prophets have brought, I am a continuation of it. So but when it comes to the fact that in Arabia, and even Jews and Christians have fallen into polytheism, Islam at that time, linguistic was what? A bid'ah, an innovation. Because what people were upon was kufru and shirk. Allah names himself Badi'us Samawati wal Ard, the one who innovated. He wants to give a literal translation, the heavens and the earth. So when we talk about bid'ah linguistically, yes, you can have bid'ah to hasana. Are we following? But when we use the term bid'ah religiously, in the context of religious discourse, there is no such thing as bid'ah to hasana. Umar ibn Khattab used this word linguistically because the Tarawih was said in Jama'ah right at the time of the Prophet ﷺ himself. He prayed at least 2 days in Jama'ah, and then the third day he refused to come out, and they asked him why. He said, because I'm afraid it may be made compulsory on you. So when Umar said Ni'ma bid'ah, this is a good innovation. He was talking about bid'ah linguistically. More so, the Tarawih in Jama'ah, as I said, was doesn't fall into bid'ah because there was a restriction where the person did not continue praying it in Jama'ah, and that was because of his fear that it could be made compulsory. When he died, there was no need to be any revelation again. So praying Tarawih in congregation is not bid'ah when we implement that principle. So for those scholars who say there is bid'ah hasana, they look at it from the linguistic angle. Note also that all the scholars who said bid'ah is accepted were scholars of the 4th Islamic century or after. Are you following? You can't find a scholar of the first 2-3 centuries ratifying the Mawlid. Are we following? It came, we classify scholars into a Salaf. When we say the Salaf, mean the first 3 generations, Sahaba, Tabi'un, and those who follow them. Then we have Al-Mutaqaddimun. Al-Mutaqaddimun were the scholars who came before the year 300 of the Hijrah calendar. And we have the Muta'akhirun, those who came after the year 300. Are we following? Those who ratify the bid'ah as being bid'ah hasana are majority scholars who came post the 300. Jalaluddin Suyuti died the year 911 of the Hijrah. Al-Hafiz died in the 8th century Hijrah. So you find scholars of this, and then of course this was where you had a lot of issues with innovations at that time. This was a period where you sticking to the madhab of a particular scholar became the end in itself. In the beginning, a madhab is like you going to primary school, and you went, okay, I went to Fahingole Grammar School. So when someone asked me, what school did you go to? Fahingole Grammar School. I mean, it's a name, and they taught me how to do some things. That was what the madhab was initially, a system of learning. But when it came to the period of the Mutakhirun, the madhab in themselves became the end in themselves. So much so that you have scholars saying that if you see a hadith that is authentic, you must not drop it and follow the hadith. You must follow our Imam. If there's even said that it's enough. As Sawi said, you following an authentic hadith in contradiction to what our Imam has said is kufr. And unfortunately, that Sawi is a Maliki. This contradicts what the Imam of the madhab himself said, that everybody can make errors, everybody can get it correct. The only person who is infallible is who? The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you have only the Mutaakhirun ratifying and justifying the bid'ah. So if you were to ask me, my argument would be yes, the Mawlid, whether it's a celebration or is a mere mentioning or mere remembrance of the Prophet, is an innovation. If it's celebration, you also have another problem because our celebrations are restricted to just two: the Eid al-Fitr, the Eid al-Adha. So it's a social thing. You're festivity. Yes, when the Prophet met people in Medina, that was their argument. He met them. They had 2 holidays, and he asked them, "These 2 holidays, what are you doing with them?" They said, "Look, they're just days. Kunna nal'abu fihima." That was what he used. He said, "We used to play on those days." If the celebration of this nature were just something social, the Prophet would have said, "You have to stop." And he said, "No, you have to stop them." And then the Eid al-Fitr and the Eid al-Adha suffices for you. How do we say the Salah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How do we celebrate the Prophet? I mentioned this earlier. The best way to celebrate the Mawlid is to follow the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What he did, what he said, how he told us to do things, how he told us to pray, how he told us things he told us to stay away from. This is the way to celebrate the Mawlid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. People who love the Prophet sallallahu more than any one of us, who were ready to lay down their life, who actually laid down their life, did not realize that there was something called the Mawlid. And there was interaction between them and Christians. Umar ibn Khattab was invited by a Christian priest to come to their church. Some people said, well, just because they didn't interact. They interacted with Christians. And Umar said, I would have come to your church, but the images there. If you can remove the images, the crucifixes and things like that, I would come. And the man did. The man removed the crucifixes, and they came and had a meal in the church. So it's permissible for a Muslim to enter a church if they remove the crucifixes and the idols. But of course, Muslims you won't even be bold enough to tell them. Because they were ready to bend. It's a thing that has to do with sociology. The dominant culture now is the culture of the West. And Christianity is a Western thing. So we try to bend our Islam to match what they are doing. In the past, it was not like that. They were the ones who were trying to bend to match us. They were the ones who were trying to look like Muslims, because this is the dominant ones. But it turned all over now, and we're having what we're having. May Allah SWT give us a firm understanding. Saying salawat on the Prophet is recommended, it's highly encouraged. In fact, Allah told us, Inna Allah himself, wal malaikata, and his angels do the salawat on the Prophet. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, sallu, that's a direct command from Allah SWT. Alayhi wa sallimu taslima. But we also do this the way Islam has taught us. May Allah give us a firm understanding of the need. My time is up. We'll take questions if there are any. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Please just, if you want to ask questions, as I said, it's a controversial issue. We cannot say that Ustaz, there's one Sheikh Fulan of Fulan Estate. He said Mawlid is permissible. No, we shouldn't mention the names. Let's ask the questions about the concept and we'll be able to respond to them. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallahu khairan. May Allah increase you in knowledge, iman, and all things good. Same for each one of us, the listeners as well. No doubt, our brother did justice to this topic. Let me start by acknowledging that we, the companion, we have not done justice to ourselves in terms of how we titled the topic. The impression that we actually gave to people outside was that we wanted to celebrate the Mawlid of Nabi. celebrating the birthday of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And the people have made this observation to me. Indeed, as this talk was going on, I still received another one. If you are still upon this practice, stop it right now and make tawbah. And this is what I wrote back to the person. I don't know the person who sent it, but it was sent to me personally. I said, I don't know who sent this message, but neither me nor any organization I belong to celebrate the Prophet's birthday. If this has to do with today's companion program, then please note that the essence of the program and choice of speaker is to prove the very point that you have made here. May Allah guide us all aright. Issues around celebrating the birth of the Prophet. That would have been a clearer something. Having said that, Sallu ala Nabiyul Karim. Sallu ala Nabiyul Karim. Alhamdulillah, last month, the term of the National Executive of the Companion finished, and then we had a new National Executive of the Companion. I am most at the national level. This is the Lagos State level. I am most pleased to inform you that sitting to my left is the new National Amir of the Companion, Ladi Thabit Wale Shunaike. May Allah guide him and all that he leads. Now, we had the national conference last month, but before then, we had our Usrah program in which our junior brother, Sheikh Abdul Majid Alaru was here, and he made an observation, as indeed others before him did as well. The new National Exco set up a committee headed by Ustaz Kunle Hassan to look into the issue of joint adhkar, as was observed. All the amirs of all 6 districts of the Companion were members of this committee, and last Saturday, or was that Sunday in Ibadan, the report of the committee was presented to the new National Exco, and the new National Exco adopted the report in its entirety. I should add that it is a consensus report. There is no differing or minority report. I will just read it out. It's a short report. The Companion issue position of doing dhikri in Jama'ah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We have had cause to review at least twice our book of adhkar, as well as modes of operation on how to apply ourselves to the book. As at our last retreat, i.e. the retreat in Moshogo, on the subject matter, our stand then was to allow one person to read the book of adhkar while others simply listen. Our present stand. There is no doubting the importance of adhkar in the life of a Muslim. We will not elucidate much on this, but suffice to say that one of the means of getting nearness to Allah is through adhkar by our tongue, our mind, and through reflections. This assignment is, however, restricted to discussing rendition of dhikri in Jama'ah, and also as it affects our book of adhkar. Dhikri, however, like any act of ibadat, must satisfy 2 main conditions. 1, the intention of the person must be sincerely for the sake of Allah. 2, it must be in accordance with what Allah stated in His book and what Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam explained in His Sunnah. Once these 2 conditions above are not present, that act of ibadat may not be acceptable. Did the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the righteous companion did adhkar in Jama'ah? We have no proof of this. Secondly, was it the practice of the earlier companion of the Prophet? Again, we have no proof of this. What we have no proof of, we cannot support it as a means of ibadah. Also, we have no evidence that rendition of adhkar loudly was the practice of the Prophet or any generation of his companion, except the prescribed dhikr on the occasion of the two Eid. What is confirmed was that when some of the companions raised their voices in dua, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to them, "Be easy with yourself, lower your voices, for you are not calling one who is deaf or absent." We therefore recommend that we put a stop to the use of our book of adhkar in our program. Notwithstanding the above, each member is enjoined to stand firm in faith and can in their private moments use the book of adhkar. This position does not in any way attempt to condemn those who hold firmly to opposing views in this matter, nor do we aim at weakening the reason for their position. We have stated the matter based on our research and understanding. Allah Ta'ala A'lam. The report was written by Ustaz Hassan. So, this is the position of the companion, inshallah. Our rendition, joint rendition of dhikr has stopped. We did not do it last month, and we did not do it this morning. Indeed, those of you who came late, we actually did something better, but I think you missed out a lot. But the implication of this also is that our lectures are now going to be starting earlier than usual, right? We find that often when we have speakers who are very good, they are normally short for time, and then we rarely have enough time to ask questions. We'll take advantage of this new position to let our lectures start earlier than usual, and then so that we can hopefully have more time to discuss the lectures as well. May Allah accept the position that we have taken as ibadat. May He make it easy for us.